If you want to know how stress affects fasting, then check out this video about intermittent fasting and cortisol. Intermittent fasting is indeed very effective for losing body fat quite rapidly. Unfortunately, it can also have some negative side effects on your thyroid and hormonal health. If fasting causes too much stress on your body, then it can lower your thyroid functioning, cause leptin resistance, decrease your metabolic rate, develop a bad relationship with food, or simply overstimulate cortisol. It's not that fasting is bad, it's the culmination of all those things that tips everything over the top. Cortisol is the body's stress hormone that increases adrenaline, releases glycogen into the bloodstream, mobilizes fat stores, and hones your alertness. Chronically elevated cortisol and stress can lead to weight gain and hormonal issues by storing visceral fat. Visceral fat is deep abdominal fat around your organs that promotes inflammation, insulin resistance, and heart disease. Cortisol mobilizes triglycerides, which are stored body fat molecules, into visceral fat cells and predisposes you to store more fat. Visceral fat cells have more cortisol receptors than subcutaneous fat, which is the fat under your skin. Elevated cortisol raises blood sugar, which increases insulin levels. This exacerbates the effect of storing calories because insulin is a storage hormone. High cortisol plus high insulin equals hyperinsulinemia, insulin resistance, obesity, and diabetes. If you notice stubborn fat around your waistline, then it's a potential sign of too much cortisol and stress. People with higher urinary cortisol levels have higher waist to hip ratios. Furthermore, being stressed out makes you psychologically more prone to overeating and prefer calorically dense hyperpalatable foods. It's a vicious cycle. More stress leads to more inflammatory behaviors, which raises more cortisol, etc. Intermittent fasting is great for lowering insulin and blood sugar, but it's not great for lowering cortisol, quite the opposite actually. If your body isn't capable of handling intermittent fasting, then it's going to cause more stress than usually. If you take it too far, then it can simply have some negative side effects. Here are some things that make fasting less stressful on your body. Become fat adapted. This conditions your body to use more of its own body fat for fuel instead of glucose. To achieve that, practice intermittent fasting, lower your carb intake slightly, and avoid inflammatory foods. Secondly, don't start off too intense. Fasting is a muscle that needs to be built up like anything else. As your mitochondria become more efficient at using fat for fuel, fasting will get easy. If you haven't done anything like this before, then it's better to start off with 16 and 8 fasting, move on to the warrior diet, and then try to do some prolonged fasting. Exercising in a fasted state while being in a caloric deficit may not be the best advice either. 3. Have proper refeeds. If you're not getting enough nutrients during the eating window, then it'll lower your thyroid further and can make it more difficult to fast the next day. You shouldn't overeat on calories, but instead focus on nutrient-dense foods like meat, eggs, vegetables, and tubers. There are far too many stressors in our life, and they all add up. My advice is to deal with the root cause, eliminate the unnecessary noise that is causing you stress, and keep the fasting. Prolonged fasting for 3 to 5 days will still cause some stress even to those who are used to it. But at the same time, it has its benefits. Slightly elevated cortisol during fasting won't negate the health benefits of the fast, because your body's gonna adapt to it quite quickly. If you enter a long fast without being fat adapted, then it's gonna be more difficult for you and you may potentially lose more muscle mass. You will definitely experience more cravings and hunger signaling, which itself can turn into an additional stressor. That's why becoming fat adapted before doing the fast will make it much easier and it's gonna lower the stress. People who already suffer from some adrenal dysfunctions or hormonal issues, then for them I wouldn't recommend fasting for any longer than 24 hours. They need to heal their body first before they can do more extreme things. Healthy people who are already practicing some form of intermittent fasting and they refeed properly, then for them, go for it. They shouldn't be worried about anything. To know how much cortisol you have, take the fasting cortisol test. The normal fasting cortisol level range is 10 to 20 micrograms per deciliter in the early morning, from 3 to 10 micrograms at 4 p.m. You will naturally have higher cortisol in the morning, which would wake you up. This is often accompanied by elevated blood sugar, also known as the dawn effect. Cortisol should be higher in the morning upon wakening and lower before going to bed. Fasting helps to lower blood sugar and insulin, but to lower cortisol, you want to practice some other forms of stress management. Number 1. Meditation and mindfulness. 2. Quality sleep. 3. Eliminate caffeinated drinks. Coffee raises cortisol and blood sugar. Given how much coffee people drink, it's safe to say that it has a negative impact on weight loss and cortisol levels. 4. Circadian alignment. Circadian mismatches promote insulin resistance, higher blood sugar, and more cortisol. 5. Adaptogenic compounds. Ashwagandha, turmeric, cinnamon, ginger, rhodiola rosea, chaga mushroom, maca root, reishi, lion's mane, and cordyceps are but a few adaptogens that lower your stress, while simultaneously increasing your resiliency against future insults. You don't want to live a stress-free life because it predisposes you to the randomness of life. Instead, you want to build up your stress resiliency and adapt to it. If you want to know how to start intermittent fasting, then check out my full guide to intermittent fasting ebook. But other than that, thanks for watching this video. Make sure you click the like, subscribe, notification bell as well. My name is Seem. Stay fat adapted, stay empowered.